Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hi guys, welcome to CMA US Part 2 lecture series from Global Phoenix. So your CMA Part 2 basically is titled as Strategic Financial Management, right? So the title of this part is, as I just mentioned, Strategic Financial Management. Now, what do we cover in this particular, part two? We know that in part one we did financial planning, performance, and analytics, where we discussed on financial reporting, planning, budgeting, forecasting, performance management, cost management, internal controls, technology, and analytics. Six sections are covered in part one. So now, what are covered in part two? What is the content of this part two? What is the learning outcome for this part two? What is the weightage for each section? That is what we are going to cover in the first introduction video. So the title of part two is Strategic Financial Management. So as you can see in the title itself, we can understand that we are going to discuss more about financial management in part two. If you see part one, we did more of financial reporting, costing, performance management, and those stuff. Whereas in part two, we are going to focus a little bit more on the financial management. Like, in short, if I have to cover financial management, I would say that where are you getting your funds from? Sources of funds. What are you doing with that money? Application of funds. Where are you investing that funds that you have raised and all that stuff? What is the dividend policy of your company, borrowing cost of your company, weighted average cost of capital, all those stuff. So basically, how your finances are managed in your organization. We are going to talk a little bit more about those parts in part two. So without any further delay, let's get into the introductory video. So the exam guide is identical to what we have already discussed in part one. So the examination structure, the mode of exam, the exam instructions, the timing, duration, scoring, everything is exactly same as your part one. So I'll quickly cover up that in case if somebody is doing part two first and part one later. So pay attention to this. If you have already done part one and you know this content, you can skip it to the next section of this lecture. Okay, so the mode of the exam, the CMA exams will be online, computer based. So there will not be any pen and paper model for your CMA exams. It will be computer based examination. The total exam will be for 500 marks, out of which you have to score 360 marks to pass the exam, which is 72%. Okay, so 360 is the pass mark out of 500. So the exam duration will be for 4 hours, which is split into two. First 3 hours for MCQs and last 1 hour for essays. So your exam structure will be consisting of 100 MCQs and 2 essay questions. So you'll have 3 hours for completing the 100 MCQs and you'll have 1 hour to do the 2 essay questions. So here there is one small adjustment that you can do. That is, if you complete your MCQ section in, let's say, 2.5 hours, so then you can press submit, and if your essay section is open, then you will have 1.5 hours to spend over there. So basically, if you have any surplus time in this 3 hours, that will be carried forward into essays. But if you are running out of time, sir, can I do 3.5 hours MCQs and half an hour essay? Not possible. At the end of the third hour, MCQ section will automatically close. So now here is a major criteria which you all should know. That is, minimum 50% MCQs should be answered correctly to get into the essay question section. So at least half of your MCQs should be correct. Then only you will go into the essay section. If less than half, like, so for example, you got only 40 MCQs correct. Out of 100 MCQs, you got only 40 MCQs correct. You will not be taken into the essay section. You will be sent out of the exam hall. You will get one performance report and you will have to rebook your exam for next window. Okay. So minimum eligibility to open the essay section is 50% of your MCQs being correct. So there are total 100 MCQs, out of which 90 are the marked questions, as in you will get marks for those 90 questions. 10 questions will not be graded. So what are those 10 MCQs, sir? You don't know, ma? See, IMA wants to test the students. So out of the 100 MCQs, they will add some 10 MCQs just for you, just for their research purpose. They want to know whether how the students are performing on those 10 MCQs, and based on the average performance, they will test those 10 MCQs in the next windows. So suppose you are giving exam in September 2024. Okay, so 10 MCQs in your window will not be marked. You will have score only for 90 MCQs. So these 10 MCQs based on average student performance, they will test them in the next windows, like for example Jan 25, or else May 25, or September 25, like that. So 10 MCQs are not tested, they are not scored, but you don't know what are those 10 MCQs. So technically you will have to appear for all the 100 MCQs as normal. You cannot distinguish between the marked ones and unmarked ones. So MCQs will be total for 75% of the score. So 500 into 75% is 375. So 375 marks for 90 MCQs. So 10 are not corrected. So 375 divided by 90. So don't do that math. That is useless, because some MCQs might be for 10 marks, some MCQs might be for just 2 marks. There is no standard marking structure that all MCQs will have the same score level. So don't go in that particular direction. Okay, so 2 essays will be for 25% of the score, that is 125 marks. So within each essay there might be 4 to 6 sub questions. So that will be your structure for your CMA part 2 examination. So in short, it is an online exam for 500 marks. So you will have to score at least 360 to pass the exam. So 375 marks will be for MCQs, 125 marks will be for essays, 75 and 25 percentage. And you have to get at least 50% of the MCQs correct in order to get into the essay section. 10 questions in MCQs will not be marked, they are for just research purpose. That is the summary of your exam guide for part 2. Now talking about the syllabus. So what are the contents of CMA part 2 syllabus? So you have 6 sections in CMA part 2. So those sections are listed here. So the first one is financial statement analysis. So if you remember your part 1 section A, was external financial reporting decisions. So here it is financial statement analysis. So what is the difference? So in part 1 section A, you learned how to prepare the financial statements. What are the components of the financial statements? What are assets? What are liabilities, equities, fixed assets, non-current assets, current assets, valuation of non-current assets, revaluation gains, impairment losses, then valuation of inventory, then receivables, factoring, with recourse, without recourse. So all that stuff you learnt in part 1 section A, presentation of the financial statements and the decisions related to that. Here in part 2, you are going to talk about how to analyze those financial statements. We are going to use ratios. Okay, we are going to talk about vertical analysis versus horizontal analysis. All right, so what are all this? We'll discuss more about that when we go into the lectures or the syllabus, whatever you want to call it. So first part, section A of your part 2 of CMA. Sorry, this is part 2. Okay, so part 2 section A first covers financial statement analysis, how to analyze the financial statements, and this will be for 20% of the score. We know that part 2 exam is for 500 marks, so 20% of the score means 100 marks. Okay, then second section is corporate finance. Or what is corporate finance? Corporate means companies, right? So what are the elements of the finance of companies? Like for example, as an individual, if I want money, I can go for a personal loan, I can use my credit card, I can take a housing loan, I can take a car loan, vehicle loan, education loan, uh, crop loan or agricultural loan. So there are different types of sources of funds for an individual. Similarly, for a company, what are the different sources of funds? From where can they get the money? Equity, debt, bonds, debentures, loan notes, or taking loans from banks, commercial banks, private banks, then foreign funding. So there are different sources from which companies can get their money that they need for business. So we are going to talk about that: weighted average cost of capital, how to calculate that, which whether should we go for debt or whether we should go for equity issue, all that stuff. That will be for 20% of the score, again 100 marks. Then comes the third section of your CMA part 2, which is business decision analysis. So there are a lot of decisions which are taken in the day-to-day operations of the business. So how are those decisions taken, and what are the considerations that should be considered before the decisions are finalized, or just a second. Yeah. So, what are the factors to be considered before the decisions are finalized? So, here we use something called as a CVP analysis, which is short for cost volume profit analysis. Cost volume profit means how many units you should produce to break even. Break even means no profit, no loss. How many units you should produce to get a desired profit of 100,000. Sir, if I want $1 million of profit, how many units should I produce and how many units should I sell? So if I'm selling multiple products, A, B, C, three different products, how much of A, how much of B, and how much of C? So all that will be analyzed. So that is why this section is called decision analysis. CVP is the main component of section C, cost volume profit. And after that, you also have something called as marginal analysis. So this marginal analysis, we are going to talk about relevant cost, irrelevant cost, average cost, then marginal cost, whether we should buy from outside external party, whether we should make it in house, whether we should take it on a lease, or whether we should buy an asset. So all those kind of decisions will be covered again in the section C. And so after that, we also talk about pricing decisions, means how we should price the product. So if you are transferring internally within a branch, then what should be the product pricing? If you are transferring, if you are selling directly to a customer, then what should be the pricing? So all that stuff. So just to recap, section C, decision analysis. Earlier it was called decision analysis, now it is renamed to business decision analysis. So we cover mainly three areas. What are the main three areas? The first one is CVP analysis, second one is marginal analysis, and the third one is your pricing decisions. So in CVP, cost, volume, and profit, how many units to produce, what should be the number of units required for a desired level of profit, etc., etc. In marginal, we are going to talk about relevant cost, irrelevant cost, contribution margin, sunk cost, avoidable, all different types of cost, fixed cost, average costs. Then we are going to talk about make versus buy, or all those decisions relating to the business. And in the third part of the section C, we'll talk about pricing decisions. So if you are a monopoly, then how you should price your product. If you are a monopolistic, how you should price your product. If you are in a competing market, your Potter's generic strategies, whether you are a cost leader or whether you are going for product differentiation. So all that stuff we are going to discuss in detail in section C of CMA part 2. Then going to the section D. So earlier section D was called risk management. They added the word enterprise risk management, enterprise risk management, however you are pronouncing it. So here we are going to, this is a very small section. You have just one, unit in that, no 5-6 units in section D. So here we are going to talk about different types of risks that a business will face. Like for example, operational risk, labor going on strike, or else your supplier is out of contact, or you are unable to get raw material on time, your machinery breakdown. All these operational risks could be there for a business. Similarly, there could be market risk, something external market, political risk, legal risk, financial risk, capital risk. international risk, maybe foreign exchange rates are changing and all that stuff. There could be risk related to your policies of the company, volatility, time management, all these different types of risks that a business will be facing. How to mitigate the risk, what are the different strategies that they can follow. There is something called a TARA framework. So transfer the risk to someone, avoid the risk, reduce the risk, accept the risk. So you have different types of strategies that you can form for these risks. We'll discuss in detail when we go into the lectures. So there is one important topic called as VAR, value at risk, and then ERM, enterprise risk management. Those two are theoretical topics which are also frequently required and tested for CMA exam. But VAR calculations are not the part of CMA syllabus. Only VAR related theoretical discussion will be there. Value at risk concept. That is the calculation of VAR is a very advanced level, usually covered in ACCA AFM paper, advanced financial management paper, or else in your CFA level 2, level 3, there we will cover those, not required for CMS students. Then talking about the section E. Earlier it was investment decisions, now the word capital is added. So they added business, enterprise and capital words to make it much more clear. So what are we talking about here? See, this is an extension from section B, continuation from section B. In section B, we discussed about the corporate finance, means from where the company is raising the funds, from where the company is getting the money. In section E, we are going to talk about investment decisions. So once the company got the money, what should it do with that money? Should it invest in assets? Should it buy the assets? Should it lease those assets? Or whether they should expand a new branch, whether they should invest in some projects or not. If there are three different projects, which project should they choose? What are the different techniques that we'll use? Net present value, internal rate of return, payback, discounted payback. So all these different techniques that are used to evaluate an investment decision related appraisal. So that is your section E. What do you do with the money? Basically, where do you invest that? How do you evaluate various options that are available? So if I talk about section E, mainly two components will be there. One is capital budgeting. Okay, so how do you budget for your capital needs? And the second one is investment decisions. So how you will invest, where will you invest, how will you pick your investment? Then the last section of your syllabus, the most ignored section, which is for 15% of the score. Oh, sorry, I think I missed giving the scores. So 25% would be 150 marks, 10% would be 50 marks again, 50 marks again, and 15% would be, wait, this is 125, I guess. Yeah. And this is 75 marks. Okay, so total 200, 325, 500 marks. Okay. So section F is your professional ethics. This is one of the most ignored area for the CMA students, but usually this is tested in your essays. Very commonly, very frequently tested in the essays regarding what are the business ethics that should be there, and what are the different types of frauds that are done in the organization, how a management accountant should be able to identify the fraud, detect the fraud, and how they can what kind of steps should be taken to prevent those kind of frauds. Different types of frauds, like this is a newly added topic in section F, that is explaining different types of frauds, like asset misappropriation, or manipulating the financial statements, theft of cash, theft of inventory, fraud in the payroll statements, then creating fake suppliers and releasing payments to fake vendors, recording fake accounts receivable to boost the sales figures, and then recognizing bad debts for against those fake receivables, all that stuff. So basically everything related to the ethics part will be covered here. SMA topic has been removed. So that's one topic which is removed from the syllabus. and instead of SMA they have added types of business frauds and all that stuff. So it is now more practical than theoretical, even the section F part. Earlier it was purely theoretical, now it is more practical also. So those are your six syllabus areas or sections of your part 2. So I hope you got a complete clarity as to what are the contents of CMA part 2, what we are planning to learn here, what we are going to learn here, right? So in the next series of videos we are going to see about each section in detail, and then we are going to go further. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep smiling, take care, stay safe. Thank you, bye bye.